At AIA Australia, helping your clients in their time of need is our number one priority. In 2016, we paid over $1.15 billion in claims to both retail and group members. That's over $4.5 million every working day. To offer your clients cover you can trust, chat to your AIA CDM today.
All right. This week is a bit of a unique XY Advisor podcast. We've never done one like this before. Normally, it's all the screens, it's all split up, and it's all digital. But we're in person.
Great, good to be here. You're going to introduce me?
Yes, of course. Angus Woods of Advisor Ratings, but I'm pretty sure most of you guys will already be aware of that. Some time ago now, a couple of years, I guess, when you kicked this off, and there was all hoopla in the media. It was the end of the world.
Certainly was.
Advisors were gone.
Yep. We were all being replaced by robo-advice, digital sort of platforms and what have you, and all that scare factor is no longer there. But it's gone well over the last 2 years. I think at the moment, when we first launched, as you were saying, there's a lot of consternation out there in the market as to what we were doing, what we were trying to achieve, and what have you. But now we're 3 years in, and we've got about 30 to 40% of the market engaged on the platform.
That's awesome.
Receiving reviews, so we're up to close to I think 15,000 reviews.
Is this reviews from clients about
reviews?
Their
advisors? Clients reviewing their advisors. So obviously, I'd encourage all advisors to actually get on the platform eventually.
Yep.
We're getting a lot of encouragement from licensees who are starting to look at it as a mandatory aspect of bringing advisors on board.
Yep.
Particularly those mid-tier licensee firms. We've come a long way from the days of 2 years ago when I was working out of the basement of my own house out at Bellevue Hill. So, yeah.
Well, there's actually a pretty cool little XY Advisor Ratings overlap in that Benny Nash, who is one of the co-founders of XY, was somehow ended up on your promos. He was one of the highly rated, and pretty much Advisor Ratings lost all credibility at that point.
Yeah, I can understand. We didn't realise that at the time. We just realised later that Ben was a marketing guru and would put his face on anything and everything.
Exactly.
So but kudos to Ben for getting on board early and bringing on a lot of other advisors actually along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the time I was certainly advising and got me involved. But the reason why I wanted to chat with you today is, well, obviously you've got a really cool view, sort of overlook over advice. I would say a unique one where most people don't, because you're not a licensee. You're not a product provider, and you're not an advisor. So there's some pretty cool aerial views, I'd say, you got over the industry. And then I'd like to also talk to you about what you're doing in Advisor Ratings as far as connecting people with dealer groups, because on the Facebook group, which is now almost 1,200 members, dealer groups get brought up a fair bit. And it's one of those things where people get annoyed with what they're doing currently and who they're currently with. And then it, ultimately descends into a conversation about, is the grass greener or is it not? And is it more hassle to stay or is it more hassle to go? And no one knows.
Yeah, well, good that you met. So going back to your original comment around, I guess, the fact that we are independent, we're not tied to any institution, we're not beholden to any product manufacturer. And, when we first launched and we're raising capital for this business, it was very enticing, I guess, from certain elements of the market who were willing to fund us for us to say, enticing insofar as do we take those funds or not, which would then jeopardise our independence.
Right.
We decided to basically bootstrap the business and get funding from family, friends, high net worths and what have you, and that's kept our independence. And we've just done another capital raise, which has ensured basically, I guess, the longevity of the business model,
Yep.
whilst also keeping the independence.
Yep.
Obviously now there are certain revenue streams, which I think advisors are aware of. There's subscription models that are on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
We are sort of doing sort of advertising and what have you, which is very much, it creates a revenue stream for us, but it ensures the independence, so we can keep the platform running. It's free for consumers. One of the areas that I guess, as you touched on, whilst we've explored this market quite closely, it was also understanding there are 1,600 licensees in this marketplace.
Is there?
1,600 licensees in Australia, managing 24,000 advisors. But yeah,
wow.
and so part of the work that we've got a data team that basically analyses every licensee in the marketplace where we can. 1,000 of those licensees are your independent guys, your mum and dads out in the suburbs that have their own AFSL,
right?
And then you've got your top 300 licensees that have got maybe 20 or more advisors under their umbrella.
Yep.
And then you've got a sort of another 200 or 300 that have got anywhere between 5 and 20 advisors. We've been speaking to licensees about, what sort of platforms do they currently have. So the admin platforms, do they use BT Panorama? Do they use BT Wrap? Do they use CFS? Et cetera, Hub24, Net Wealth, and what have you. So we're starting to collect all that information and what our advisors think about all the admin platforms.
Right.
And then there's the software providers, your Xplans and your Coins and what have you. So we're getting a full understanding about what licensees actually have embedded within their organisation for advisors to use, what capability sets that they could deliver to advisors, and then going to the next level around things like, I guess, things like what fee structures, do they currently have, are they, can the advisor take equity in terms of the licensee and what have you? What are the joining requirements? So if I'm going from, say, CBA to a mid-tier sort of licensee firm, what sort of support am I going to get to from a transitional perspective?
Yes.
What sort of fees am I going to be charged? But also, is the culture right for me where I'm going?
How do you?
We've been interviewing licensees along the way. So this is where the Advisor Connect business came from.
Yep.
We collect all that information to understand it, so we can start to get an understanding of rating the quality of licensees out there, which also determines the quality of the advisors under their umbrella group.
Right.
So that's where the rating system comes into play. When we launched Advisor Connect 4 weeks ago. Advisor Connect, just for your listeners, is basically, I guess, a glorified or a bastardized recruitment platform. I've been getting, I realise I'll get 3, 4, 5 advisors a week that would link in with me and saying, Angus, looking to switch licensees, or I've been at this one licensee for the last 10 years. I don't know what's out there. I don't know. And I'm there going, and I would obviously have my input, look at my information and go, actually, we would recommend X, Y, Z. Yeah. We would also potentially, what are you actually after? Oh, these are the licensees. How about you go and speak to them? And then we realised that's actually, there's a business model in that itself.
So you started with advisor ratings, and now you've and kept that, and now you're doing licensee ratings.
Well, we're doing which was always the aim about sort of the we'd start off with advisors, but we'd also look at the licensees.
Yep.
From like what sort of training do they provide, compliance, because that also obviously feeds down to understanding what training that's and so forth that the advisors are getting.
Mate, so that's what a weird position in the market. So you're like the expert on licensees now.
Well, we didn't realise we'd become that way, but we have become that way as we sort of started to get ingrained in, in the conversations that we're having.
Yeah. I guess it's a natural progression.
Yeah.
And so so you go into a licensee, now they're going to tell you, we're the best culture ever.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you determine? For your advisors, what we've done is
we looked at the 1,600 licensees. Now, we're not focused on the 1,000 mum and dads that that are independently licensed. Now, there are those independent licensees that are out there, like the 1 and 2 man bands, that are feeling the pinch when it comes to compliance and regulation and cost, and should they continue carrying on with their own AFSL, or should they actually go to another service provider under an AFSL, or where can they get their services from? So certain dealer groups that'll go, well, we also look after the self-licensed. So we went and had a look at the top, I guess, 400 licensees. And then we went through a bit of a desktop research, I guess, exercise, as well as speaking with advisors around licensees. What are they good at? What are they not so good at? And what have you. Then we narrowed that down to, I guess, the top, what we believe is at this point in time to be the top sort of 30 licensees in the marketplace, based on certain criteria. Where we want to get to, and we've probably signed up 8 licensees as of today. We want to get to a maximum of 15 licensees that we know inside and out, and we would recommend to advisors if they're coming into the industry or they're looking to switch licensees. So we're in that process of going and shortlisting those licensees. That's where the Advisor Connect side comes into place. So they've, I guess it's a technology play whereby it's data driven, but it's also qualitative in terms of we ask all the questions, the pertinent questions that, say, a recruiter would ask when they're looking to find a new job. As you would. So the licensees will have the opportunity to pitch themselves to advisors that are looking to switch on our shortlist. The advisors, all they have to do is register with us if they're interested in seeing what's out in the marketplace. Where it will get to at the moment, the licensees have a login. At one point in time, the advisors will say yes, Angus, or yes. In this instance, it will be Rudy, who you'll be speaking to, who's just joined as our head of growth. Rudy would say to the advisor, okay, let's understand you a little bit more. I've got all this information about you from ASIC and from Equifax and what have you. But let's understand you and what your requirements are.
So you know the financial. So say if I was still financial planning under my own business and I put myself into Advisor Connect. So you would then have the financials on my company.
We would ask high level information from you. There are certain things that we would know about you from a negative criteria perspective. So what Equifax provides is things like, directorships of organisations. Have you been a director of any liquidated companies in the past? So there are risk elements.
Just corporate governance, though.
Corporate governance work. So it's mostly related to that. Have you got an up-to-date police check? Have you ever been bankrupt? Those sorts of questions that you're going to get asked by the licensee anyway. But what we do is help filter out advisors that potentially may not suit certain licensees.
And maybe have a history of swapping a lot in the past.
Swapping a lot in the past. Some of that's publicly available. I guess it keeps a register of that. But we put all that in a nicely designed format in a portal for licensees. And at that point in time, the advisor will go, yes, I am willing to share my data with these licensees that you've suggested. So it's not that we go and share your data with the licensees. You have to give us permission if you're wanting to have a conversation to go, I'm now willing to have a conversation with, say, I won't name the licensees now, but we're up to 8. But say I'm willing to have a conversation with X licensee based on where you're based in sort of certain geographies and what have you, and based on these criteria. Think of it, it's the Tinder of licensee and advisors. So it's a matchmaking service. So it goes down to it's data led, but it's also sort of qualitative type work that we do as well.
Okay, cool. So and I'll touch on it again. A lot of advisors don't know much about dealer groups and licensees. It's just one of those things where we haven't. To be honest, there's never been a place to go. There's anecdotal evidence from different people, but nothing like what you're talking about. So Is it free for advisors?
It's free. It's free for advisors.
Okay.
So being open with the commercial model here, it's the licensees that we shortlist. They all sign up to the same arrangement, which is a retainer to get access to this platform.
Okay, so for them, it's a top of the lead funnel. For the advisors, it's a place to examine what's available on the market.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that's it at the end of the day, and we've got strong interest from the licensee market. Obviously, they're challenged as well as to how to get qualified advisors under their book,
Yeah, of course.
under their banner. And from that perspective, and we're only looking to. There are certain licensees, without naming names, that would never make this list.
Can think of a couple?
Yeah. So and we're only speaking to what we believe are the top licensees in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think I saw an early draft of a few of those, and there was a lot of good ones on there.
Yeah. And we've had feedback from so we've been. I'm sure a couple of people listening today are aware of what we're doing. Is we've sought feedback from the advisor space as well.
Yep.
So it's not all just speaking with licensees, as you would say, who would like to say that they are the best and better than the bloke down the road.
Of course.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. And is it open now?
It is open now. So we're now seeking feedback at the moment. So we've got about 50 advisors that are currently interested in switching. We actually were surprised. We did a small EDM out there to the market, and we've got we had about 150 interested. A lot of those were just sort of seeing what the process was and what have you, but 50 actually in market wanting to switch already.
Yeah, right. It doesn't surprise me.
And we we know through the ASIC portal and through the market that 15 or 20% of advisors switch licensees every year. So there's a churn rate. There's a churn rate in the market of about 15%.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so there's about 3,000 to 4,000 advisors.
Wow.
That are basically switching every year.
And they're flying blind, essentially.
Well, yeah, no, especially the new guys into the marketplace don't know where to start, where to go, and all that, And sometimes it makes sense to, you get the support of maybe a bank or support of one of the bigger institutions.
Yeah.
But you're finding now a lot of people have that support. They want them to sort of, broaden their APL, or they want to do certain things like that, where it makes sense to go, okay, I've got a book now.
Yes.
I actually want to sort of take that book and have a bit more control over it.
Yes.
And what have you. So, and that's where, certain licensees sort of help with that transition process.
Okay. So let's talk about one that I'm pretty familiar with, because I used to use Hillross.
Yeah.
So Hillross AMP Charter, I'm pretty around. Now, I know there's probably a lot on the Facebook group on XY Advisor that are with these three. And we don't need to go into the specifics, but as you're probably aware, people can feel like they are quote unquote locked in. In your experience, have you seen advisors be able to move out of that situation?
It all depends on the individual, like the individual contracts.
Gotcha.
Are basically different for each advisor.
Yeah.
Some have the ability to move their books, others don't.
Yep.
Others feel beholden because they might have loans over their business and what have you.
There's a weird rule in some of these contracts which say if you sell your business, you can't work as an advisor. Have you ever heard?
I've heard of that. Have
you ever seen it?
I've heard of that. I'd like to think that I don't know how you get around with the non-compete clauses in terms of, not non-compete being, in terms of fairness, in terms of going off and working, if that's all your only profession and excluding you from doing that.
Yes.
I don't know how that can be enforced, but I'd imagine, but it's like anything, I guess. It's the restraint of trade is one of those things that I guess every employer tries to put on an individual, but can it actually be enforced?
It's one of those boogeymans of the industry. What about, now I know of some advisors, and they've used this strategy in the past, where they'll work for a big institution, and then say they're a Commonwealth Bank planner, and they say, okay, I've got 100 clients here, I'm going to go start my own business. And, if they come with me, it's not my fault. Are these type of topics being looked at by the oncoming? Because these are sort of real topics that advisors are discussing, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of conversation, is that being picked up by these dealer groups?
Yeah, I think the dealer groups with the advisors that are incoming from certain organisations are aware of certain practices and how much restraint they have over their clients.
Right, so they're familiar with the concept.
Yeah, they certainly are. So a lot of instances of advisors switching. I think the licensees that we're talking to at the moment are aware that some books are stickier at the existing licensee than others.
Yes.
That said, it's always quite difficult when you look at it from, like, let's take it a step back, when you look at it from a consumer point of view.
Yep.
As a client, you often have a relationship with the advisor. You don't have a relationship with the institution.
Yes.
So if an advisor does switch licensees, very hard for that, say, brand to retain full ownership over that customer.
Yep.
And that's always, when you sell a book and what have you, having to convince your clients to go with this new advisor that sold your book and what have you. And when you're switching licensees, it gets into that delicate situation around, well, I've gone over here, but apparently I can't get you onto the new licensee. But at the end of the day, my relationship is with you, and if you're still practicing. So to your point, I think it's very hard to police the fact that clients will end up going, well, hang on, no, I've got this relationship still with this advisor.
Yes.
And I want to transfer but you can't poach them.
Yes.
Because of the contractual requirements.
Correct.
That said, I think at the end of the day, it's the power's in the hands of the client.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping a client from doing that. Yes, you're restrained from going and poaching those clients. I understand that.
Yes.
But really, if you have a good relationship with your client, I think most of them would actually follow you.
Yeah. 100%.
You're probably leaving behind your C&D clients that you should probably be speaking to a lot more, guys.
Correct.
But that said, I think the ones that are probably more highly engaged will come across with you.
Yeah. With these, and I'd imagine so on the Advisor Connect, are they all independent?
No, a mix. So we've got a mix of licensees to suit different advisors.
Right.
Different size groups, different, I guess, training sort of structures, different technology that's embedded. One of the areas that we were looking at as a huge focus is technology, openness of product, and what have you. Is one of the areas that we sort of had as a high criteria in terms of putting these licensees on the list.
Yep.
So they're two areas that we look at, and then obviously the ongoing training. Now, it's not going to say that they're the lowest fees or anything like that. We're a bit sort of when it comes to fee structures, you get what you pay for.
Okay. Yeah.
At the end of the day, some are cheaper than others, and it's up to the advisor to make that assessment along with us.
Yes.
And along with the licensee.
Yes.
Some of those fee structures are obviously negotiable.
Yep.
When you go to certain licensees, depending on your caliber as an advisor, how qualified you are, what books you're coming across, and those sorts of things. How much training do they need to put into you as an advisor?
Yes.
At the end of the day, so especially as we go through all the education requirements, if you're on a diploma or an advanced diploma, and the regulator and the government are talking about getting to degree qualified, some of that cost may be borne by the licensee if it's not borne by yourselves.
Right. Yep.
So all of that needs to be considered by the licensee and yourselves when you're switching.
Yes.
How much investment do they have in your growth?
Yeah. It's a real weird thing with legislation about grandfathered remuneration and switching dealer groups. Now, obviously, you're not an advisor, so I wouldn't expect you to be around it 100%. But do you have sort of Do you get those questions at all at this stage?
We haven't had those questions at this stage. It is very much on our radar, though.
Yes.
About how to address that.
Yes.
And also it's about understanding, whilst we look at the total licensee market, then it comes down to your point earlier, comes down to the different arrangements, the different contractual arrangements. Most of the time, the grandfather commissions, you sort of, in certain instances, you have to walk away from, which makes it difficult. Others, you can sort of negotiate a buyout or what have you and bring your clients across. So that you're buying the value or come to some agreement with your licensee to how do you carry on the grandfathered commissions under your own umbrella at maybe a discount.
Wow. Okay.
So there's those sorts of things that you can potentially negotiate with your licensee.
Right.
That being, if they're going to lose you as an advisor, they want to ensure that that the end client may potentially end up sort of switching anyway or switching out a product. So it's in their interest to not go hardball on you.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. To keep the client around in the product at least for as long as possible.
Yeah, it's one of it's.
That's
what it's part of when you switch, and this is what I'd say to anyone that's thinking of switching or they're just a bit sort of fed up with their existing licensees. One, keep a good relationship with them because you're going to have to negotiate your exit in certain instances.
Yep.
Certain advisors can switch freely, others can't.
Yep.
So when you are switching, negotiate with thinking about what's in the licensee's head as well. So put yourself in their shoes about where the risks are,
right?
About when you leave, when it comes to, they're probably going to be emotional about you switching.
Yes.
So try and remove the emotion from it and come in there with the factual sort of like the dollar terms of what it means by them switching, what they could potentially lose and what have you. And then come at it from that angle.
Yeah.
And then start to talk about how you can move your clients across if you can. Even if you can't under the contract, there are ways to talk to them about that.
Yeah, interesting. What are the things that you're seeing from a licensee point of view? Like, let's say I'm a high caliber advisor and I'm interested in switching. And let's say I'm looking at 3 or 4 different licensees. What are the licensees looking for in advisors?
Yeah, so good question. So when we get a request from an advisor to switch or to look at switching, we send out basically a short survey or questionnaire, and then we follow that up with a much more detailed phone call. There are certain things that licensees are looking for, like how trained are you in a certain software platform? For example, we know 50% of the market uses Iris Xplan at the moment. And some of those licensees on our short list require that advisors have familiarity with Xplan.
Right.
Others are less agnostic and say yes, we use Xplan, but we can train someone up that's not Xplan efficient.
Okay.
There's others that'll go, yes, we use Xplan, but we're comfortable if they want to continue using Coin or Midwinter or what have you. So there are those licensees. So we've got a mix of those licensees based on that criteria that'll say, okay, if you're an Xplan advisor, these guys are really comfortable with you coming across, potentially may pay you a premium to come across to them,
really,
because they don't have to invest in you when it comes to training.
Right.
Then there are others. The other questions we ask, there are those that only want degree qualified advisors. So we ask those questions of the advisor: how qualified are you when it comes to what sort of ongoing CPD do you do in training? Certain licensees require that you tick off. You might have to be part of a membership organisation.
Yeah.
You might have to be part of the AFA.
Does XY advisor
the
count?
FPA, XY advisor ratings. It all counts. So the FPA and the AFA might get scared of us saying that we're going to turn ourselves into an association. That's not happening, guys. Or the SMSF Association. There are other areas that we look at. So in terms of obviously fund size? What is your FUA at the moment? What is your funds under advice?
Yep.
Can you actually switch those clients? So obviously that's a big value prop for the licensees, as I was talking about before. There are ways to do that.
Yep.
Some easier to switch than others. And then we look at those we've got a mix of our licensee group. So some that want salaried advisors,
yep.
particularly if someone's first coming into the market. There are those that may be looking at self-employed advisors, so those with your own sort of, Clayton Daniel Proprietary Limited,
yep.
or those that are self-licensed, so those 1,000 licensees down in the bottom group,
mm-hmm.
but they've got dealer services that can actually support their current licensing arrangements within their total licensee outfit.
Yeah.
So we ask certain things of the advisor that the licensees are looking for.
Right.
And then what we do with that is we go based on what you've told us, advisor X,
yep.
is these are the 4 licensees that match your criteria.
Yes.
We would go and say, these are the 4 licensees. Do you want us to kickstart a conversation with them? Or it might be the advisor goes, oh no, I've already spoken to that licensee in the past.
Right.
I don't get along with them, or for some reason they're crossed off the list.
Yep.
And then we might narrow it down to 3 or 2.
Okay.
On their behalf. No obligation. It's going in, having a chat.
Yeah,
we don't inform.
Right.
We don't inform the existing licensee that you're having a chat.
Very good.
The licensees themselves, I'm sure, would not inform the market. It's part of our confidentiality requirements about being on the platform.
Yep.
That you can't actually have a conversation externally, that you've had a conversation with this advisor.
Right, so it's more like the Ashley Madison rather than the Tinder version.
Well, there you go. Maybe the Ashley Madison. Hopefully, even though we won't get hacked and all those details get into the marketplace. So your licensee goes, oh no.
And so that's what the dealer groups are looking for in an advisor. What are you finding that the advisors are looking for in a licensee?
Advisors. So the big questions that are coming up from the advisors, I'll put it up there as a number one, even though we're sort of like, is fees. Like, what sort of fees do we charge, and the value for those fees? What am I getting out of it? Certain advisors who struggle for leads. So there are certain advisors that actually are great at hunting for leads and going out there and marketing. Some advisors aren't so good at that.
Yep.
So they want to know, have they got lead referral sort of programs in place?
Like GPS Wealth, I know they used to.
And InFocus has, I think, a referral relationship with H&R Block.
Okay.
So there are certain licensees that have big referral agreements in place.
Right.
The banks obviously have their own internal lead generation system from the banking arm.
Yeah, of course.
But then it's about understanding, are you going to feed me enough leads?
Right.
What marketing support are you going to give me?
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to promote me as an advisor, promote me as your brand, and what sort of investment are you putting into?
Right.
The third element would be technology that the advisors are sort of inquiring about. What sort of technology, how sort of advanced are they when it comes to the advisors that are switching now realise that there's this massive change going on in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Some licensees are investing in themselves, others aren't. They want to know that the licensee is going to be around. Are they investing in themselves?
Yeah.
What's their balance sheet look like? Can they actually support me into the future? So they actually are, advisors actually are asking sort of about the longevity of these licensees.
Good questions.
And yeah, it is good questions actually.
Yeah.
So they're not just sort of painting the surface about what fees do they charge, and we go, well, it's not about the fees. They've got to make sure that they're going to be around. If they're charging such low fees, there's a reason that they're not giving you the support.
Yeah, correct.
But then, it's things like training. A lot of them actually are feeling like, because it's such a relationship game, and advisors often work by themselves. And yes, they've got a little small company. Sometimes some have, 1 or 2 paraplanners, and, they may have, a few admin staff, but they want to feel like they're part of a family.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Which is where we're, like what sort of events do they put on, and those sorts of things. What's the love that they give beyond the sort of finances and the technology and the platforms that are utilised?
Yes.
Some advisors want to feel like they're part of something.
Yeah, absolutely. And strangely enough, that's kind of where XY advisor filled that gap because that feeling of family is very important for advisors because we're often so alone a lot of the time. So I mean, if a dealer group can offer that as well, that's a massive plus.
Well, that's not so some of the bigger dealer groups that don't have that sense of unity.
Oh, totally.
And I think some of them are working on it, but when you've got a really you've got a massive advisor base, it's hard to. How do you create that sense of oneness? It sounds like I sound very Buddhist there, don't I? But how do you create that sense of like togetherness in a dealer group, which is difficult. The bigger you grow, it becomes more difficult. Obviously the dealer groups have got different priorities and all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, they're only as good as the advisors they bring on board.
Yes.
And if they're not giving them sort of that community, then
are you seeing kind of certain dealer groups are picking up exactly what they put it this way? Is there any dealer groups out there, you don't need to name them, but you feel like are nailing it right now?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And we, I would say
and attracting the best advisors.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. A lot of them have gone through, a lot of the dealer groups have basically hunkered down over the last 2 years and fixed up a lot of their processes and what have you.
Because there's so much change.
So much change going, okay, we need to be abreast of these things. We need to give service back to our advisors that potentially we weren't getting the value before.
Yep.
Also, about, with the whole change in commission structures and what have you, REMs under pressure for advisors. So they want to actually see more non-monetary benefits come their way. The stuff that now is off the table is suddenly back on the table about investing in efficiencies, investing in, how do we give more time back to the advisors if we can't give them more money, but how do we give more time, but also potentially more leads that fills that gap?
Yeah.
So there are certain licensees that get it.
Yep.
Some are laggards still.
Yeah.
Get it, just not moving. I'd say to most licensees, just move and do something.
Yes.
Because technology is always going to be one step ahead of the curve and you're always going to have to catch up anyway, but at least start.
Oh, my God. And it's accelerating. As we know, working out of stone and chalk. Yeah. Oh, my God.
It's like I refused to get a phone for so many years, and then I got my first phone, and then I realised I just had to keep, keeping ahead of the technology and keeping ahead of things. Otherwise you become a bit sort of you get stuck in the old days, and everyone else has gone past you, and that's like some of the licensees are doing. And they'll go, I'll only invest when they won't invest because they'll think that something is better out there in 2 years' time. But then you're suddenly 10 years behind. You're 15 years behind.
God, absolutely. It's one of those things. So the second, probably dealer groups and technology is probably the two things we chat about on the group the most. And tech is one of those things where if you take 2 years to make a decision, you're already long.
Yeah, exactly right. And then they've got you've got your midwinters and you've got those other organisations that are out there that are making things easy for licensees to make the decision quickly.
Yes.
I like to think that we're doing the same. It does get frustrating because licensees are slow in making decisions.
Yeah.
But there are licensees that are basically making decisions fast. They're making, they're doing their due diligence really quickly.
Yep.
And they're putting it out into the advisor space really quickly. And you know what? They're learning as they go. And the advisors will say, guys, this hasn't worked. At least they're trying and getting up to speed on things. And they might be trialing it with maybe a handful of advisors before pushing it live to the rest of the group.
Yep.
I think that's probably the best way to go, rather than doing a whole sort of like project management due diligence piece that some of the big corporates do.
Yeah.
To go, okay, now we're going to roll this out. Suddenly there's a new tech company that's come on board that's done something a lot better than what they've done, spent 2 years trying to do.
Oh my goodness. Obviously AMP, they've put $100 million or something into this new AMP advice.
Yeah, there's
transformation.
some of the big groups have invested a lot in technology.
I couldn't, if you gave me $100 million, I couldn't spend it to fix an advice process. They've got all these fancy things. I don't know what it's going to look like in the end, but my God, $100 million.
Oh no, the amount of money that corporates spend, and I'd love to have that amount of money to spend on our part. But we,
100%.
I think it's like you get so many stakeholders involved, and like we were guilty of this in the first instance when we launched. We tried to make a platform that had all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
We're now basically at a stage where we've got a platform. I think it's a nice platform that's in the market for advisors and consumers to use. We're actually going through another iteration at the moment, which will be live shortly.
Yep.
But we made that initial mistake to try and build out a all bells and whistles platform.
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, 90% of your advisors or 90% of the traffic's going to maybe one or two areas of the website. And so, it's about us focusing on those one or two areas and making it so nice, so seamless, so easy to use.
Yes.
And then, over time you can sort of iterate and build in the other bells and whistles, as you so to speak.
Yeah.
But building bells and whistles from the outset for the sake of it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying that,
Adrian.
I'm not saying AMP that you're doing that. But yeah, I do see it. Not just in advice, but it's in every corporate business.
Mate, it's even in a tiny business, even in XY Advisor. Adrian, my goodness, we're building this membership portal at the moment, and he wants everything, and it's the rest of us sort of slapping him, saying no. So listen to that advice. Hey, I got a question. How on earth did you end up here? How did you end up as the patron saint of financial planners? Because you didn't come up through as a financial advisor, which is why you copped so much shit.
Yes.
What do
I know? What do I know about advice?
So when you came out, a lot of the and we were discussing this the other day, having a good laugh about it. It was all to do with the AFSL you were remotely linked with, and then you had a couple of people writing articles that were really worried about what you were going to do to the industry. So how did you get here? How did you get here as largely an independent view of, because it's kind of one of those things that I'm sure many people have looked at financial advice from the outside in and gone, well, you can fix that.
Yeah.
But you decided to actually help contribute to that. So tell me
about
that.
Okay, so I'll try and keep this as short as possible. I'm an accountant. My background's in financial services. I worked at Macquarie Bank and in the retail banking space, and then went over to Wizard and sort of started to get the entrepreneurial. Yeah, so I went over to Wizard and I was facilitating the sale of Wizard to GE Money on behalf of Mark at the time, Mark Burris.
Yeah.
I then started to get the feel for, I guess, the entrepreneurialism in me, given that's how small that, wasn't exactly small, it was a $400 million deal, but a smaller organisation when you come from Macquarie Bank. I then went over to Virgin Money. That's where I was CFO at Virgin. We launched, the first My Super product in the market at that time. Yeah, right. We were talking to certain dealer groups or licensees at the moment about distribution of that My Super product. We ended up going direct to consumer. Once I left there, then I realised I didn't want to work in corporate anymore. And I got a philanthropic bent about me when I saw the GFC, because I was heavily involved in the GFC from a funding perspective. Yeah, creating it, I know, all that testosterone in the boardrooms. Yeah. Doing all those margin loans, not speaking of any Sunshine Coast businesses at all. But I guess myself, I looked at advice because I saw the impact it had on consumers, mainly family and friends. Yeah, those who had good advice versus bad advice, and those who had their money stuck in sort of unlisted property funds that were driven up to the why they had 30% of their funds locked away in these listed property funds that were now heavily straddled with debt. And thinking about this isn't right. Yeah. And so I started to delve into the market quite closely, and I wrote a business plan about 10 years ago, right. On sort of rating sort of advisors, rating products, and all that sort of stuff. How can we differentiate one from the other? Yep. Sat in my desktop drawer for about 5 years, and then I dusted it off after realizing still no one's doing this. So how did I turn this into a commercial? And then I had sort of obviously startup experience, and I sat down and worked out what was the sort of revenue model. I still struggle with the revenue model, but no, so I sat down and tried to work out how does this become a self-sustaining business?
Yes.
And we basically that's how it. And then we spent about 12 months building the product and what have you. At that stage, motivated by, this is a bit of a family history, motivated by my father, who did something similar when he went into medicine.
Right.
And I think I've told this story before. My dad, when he was a pathologist, and so he said, "No, give it a go. I would never have, if I didn't get the kick up the bum to basically disrupt the pathology market at that point in time, when he partnered with some tech guy to come up with a new way of doing blood samples overnight as opposed to taking seven days or 10 days."
Right.
And that turned into Douglas Hanley Moyer, which is now owned by Sonic Healthcare. So it's he sold out early, so it didn't quite, wasn't quite the billion dollar. We weren't quite the $1 billion family. Unfortunately, he sold out of the business, but he did, he did start that with a man named Bronte Douglas. But that, by the by, that's where he sort of basically gave me the impetus. He actually said, "I'd do it," because 12 months of making a product isn't going to work. It's just try it. If it works, it works. And then we gave it a run, and unfortunately, Dad died before it launched, but that actually kept the motivation up to go. I'm gonna prove that it can work.
Yeah.
So it was an emotional motivation. Yeah. Because it's hard, as you know, Clayton.
Oh my God.
Doing a startup is bloody hard.
Absolutely.
And getting the noise that we got from the marketplace, them going and setting up the AFSL, because I thought there might be general advice on the platform. So I went and spoke to, who happens to be a friend of mine, Peter Reinberger, at iPraxis, and he copped a lot of flack for being, giving him, letting us be licensed under his umbrella.
Yeah.
By virtue of the fact that we were told we didn't have to have a license, but we just took the conservative route to get a license,
and how funny,
just in case. And then, unfortunately, as you know, the flak hit the fan when we said, "What sort of relationship do you have with iPraxis?" And to this day, we don't have any relationship with iPraxis apart from security for us from an AFSL point of view. Obviously, iPraxis has to look at us to make sure that we're compliant under their AFSL.
Yes.
But apart from that, there is no link.
There's no grand conspiracy.
No, there's no. We're not going to become some big dealer group or anything like that, like some of the organisations were fearful.
Yeah, it's crazy when new things come to the market like that. But yeah, mate. So I mean, where are we? We're sort of getting on, so we'll wrap up. But let's quickly just get to what's a good website for advisors to go to. Obviously, we know Advisor Ratings, but what's the Advisor Connect website that if there's anyone that's looking to swap?
Yeah. So we'll at the moment we're putting a widget. So those that have basically those who claim their profile in the next week, there will be a widget on the dashboard that'll be very evident.
Right.
About registering your interest.
Right.
If you haven't claimed your profile, you can obviously drop me a note or Rudy at advisorratings.com.au. So Rudy, R-U-D-I. It's a South African name, Rudy Logenberg. So you don't, when you speak to him over the phone, don't take the piss out of his South African accent. Yeah, so that's probably the best way at this stage. So claimed, obviously, through your dashboard in the next week.
Yep.
Unclaimed, just email me directly or email Rudy directly.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome, mate. Well, thanks for coming on.
No, good. Thanks for the time, Clayton, and thanks everyone from XY Advisors.
Yeah.
I love it, by the way.
Cheers, man. Well, we feel the same way about you guys. We've even had one of your investors, Koshi, speak at an event. And, it's cool.
I'm sure he'll be interested to do it again sometime if you'll bring him back.
Yeah, mate, definitely.
Yeah, good.
Cool. All right, cheers, buddy.
Thanks, mate.
All right.
Cheers.